Assalamu alaikum, dear students. I hope you all are fine and safe with your family members. As you know, Foundation University Rawalpindi campus is currently closed due to COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, in this difficult time, online education is imperative to carry on learning without interruption. That's why I, Dr. S.M. Ali Tirmizi, your teacher and guide of corporate governance course, has decided to record lectures for your convenience so that you can watch and understand content of the chapters that we will discuss and we will cover during online distance learning phase. Today, we will discuss chapter number 7 of corporate governance, that is labor market for executives and CEO succession planning. The main topics that we will cover in this chapter are listed in the next slide, and I will discuss with you the list of the topics. So, all these topics are important for you to understand because most of them will be the part of your final examination syllabus of this semester. I hope you will find this video lecture useful to clear topics and concepts of chapter number 7 of corporate governance. The topics of chapter number 7 are introduction, then labor market for chief executive officers. Number 3 is labor pool of CEO talent. Number 4 is CEO turnover. Then we'll discuss about models of CEO succession. There are 4 models of CEO succession. We will one by one discuss these 4 models. Then we'll move towards the topic of succession process. And at the end of this lecture, I have shared with you the article that you have to cover as an assignment as well as the quiz. In this chapter, we will examine the labor market for executives and the CEO succession process. Corporations have a demand for qualified executives who can manage an organization at the highest level. So we will talk about how CEOs have to be selected in an organization and how they have to be very, very, very important for an organization. The labor market for chief executives refers to the process by which the available supply is matched with the demand. The discussion in this lecture will be related to the factors that contribute to CEO turnover and evidence on how likely boards are to terminate underperforming CEOs. So the CEO's complete selection process, or you can say succession process, will be discussed. The evaluation of process of companies, that how they plan for and implement succession at the CEO level, including both internal and external candidates, will be discussed in this lecture. The efficiency of labor market for chief executives has important implications on governance quality. Here, the labor market for chief executives refers to the process by which the available supply is matched with demand, which means that a supply of individuals, which are the executives, exist who have the skills needed to handle the given responsibilities. Therefore, the efficiency of labor market for the CEO has important implications on governance quality in an organization. So, if this market is efficient, as explained by me earlier, then board of directors will have the required information to evaluate as well as price the CEO talent available in the market. Thus, in this process, once talented CEOs has been selected and recruited, the board of directors expect higher performance from these CEOs or the selected CEO, and in this way, they tend to increase discipline on managerial behavior in the organization. Now, this topic is related to labor market for chief executive officers. This topic explains the importance of recruitment of CEO by the board of directors. The role of CEO in an organization is very important because the CEO is responsible for managing the corporation and ensuring that long-term value of the firm is preserved and enhanced. So the CEO exactly knows that if in case his or her overall performance goes down, he or she can be replaced or terminated. This topic is linked with the concept of the market for corporate control, which means or which explains that the board must decide whether the firm is better off under current ownership or not. Now, further explaining this topic, this is being very clearly mentioned that the attributes the firm drives in the CEO must be matched with the compensation package offered to him or her. However, it is difficult to evaluate the effectiveness of CEO performance because the efficiency of the CEO labor market is limited by its size and the ability of the CEO. For example, in the case of James, who was the former CEO of Kraft Foods and Nabisco Holding Company, later successfully turned around Gillette. But after the sale of Gillette in 2005 to P&G, James joined the advisory board of a private equity firm, Centerview Partners, instead of joining another leading firm as CEO. The attributes I referred earlier in the slide that are being desired by the company are the skill set, uh, previous experience, risk aversion, and cultural fit, which equals the price the company is willing to pay for these attributes and the compensation package executives, which are basically the CEO, is willing to accept to join the company and lead it. Now, the labor pool of CEO talent. This is another topic that we will discuss in this chapter. So, in terms of experience, there is no standard career path that has been defined to become a CEO. According to one study, 22% of the CEO of large US corporations had a background in finance, 20% in operations, 20% in marketing, 5% in engineering, 5% in law, 4% in consulting, and 6% other. So, in as an example, in USA, according to the data provided by the Conference Board, the average CEO serves between 7 to 10 years. Studies have shown that practically there is no standard career path that eventually lead to the position of a CEO. In this slide, I have referred a research study according to which the most important CEO performance predictive attributes relating to CEO interpersonal, leadership, and work related skills are speed, aggressiveness, persistence, work ethic, and higher standards. So these attributes have more weightage than CEO's listening skills, teamwork, integrity, and openness to criticism. This means that when board of directors decide to select the best CEO for their firm, these attributes must be considered very important because long-term growth of a firm is closely linked with outstanding performance of such a best performing CEO. Now class, watch an online video relating the importance of CEO succession process.
Inside America's Boardroom, the informational show for board members and corporate secretaries. Brought to you with knowledge partners NASDAQ, the Center for Audit Quality, and PwC. Along with content contributors Equilar, Meridian Compensation Partners, Wilson Sonsini Goodrich and Rosati, R.R. Donnelly, and the Society of Corporate Secretaries and Governance Professionals.
Welcome to this edition of Inside America's Boardrooms. I'm T.K. Kerstetter, CEO of Boardroom Resources, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the show. We are filming from the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center, which is in San Francisco, and it is a nonprofit dedicated to providing entrepreneurs with quality resources and access to mentors and training and networking, and it's all free of charge to entrepreneurs. So we thank them for lending their studios for this. And today we are going to be talking about creating an effective CEO succession process. And joining me is a person that is, might be classified as an expert in this area with all your experience. Let me introduce my guest, Sarah Grootwa Singh Lewis, who is on the board of multiple boards. So let me introduce those companies just so that we have a good background. First of all, you serve on the PS Business Parks. You're chairman of the audit committee and on the nominating corporate governance committee and presiding director. You also serve on Plum Creek Timber and on the audit and compensation committees. You also serve on Sun Life Financial where you're on the Management Resources and the Governance Nominating and Investment Committee. And you serve on Adamas Pharmaceuticals, where you're on the Audit and the Nominating and Corporate Governance Committee. In addition to that, you're CEO of Lewis Corporate Advisors, a capital markets firm. So Sarah, somebody would consider that a pretty full agenda.
Yes.
But you're on the nominating and governance committees of a lot that you serve on. So typically, it's not always the case.
Right.
Sometimes it's in the comp committee, but CEO succession is typically looked at from the nominating governance part or the compensation. So the rewarding and the recruitment, the rewarding and the retention of the CEO is one of what I call the core responsibilities of the board. The other responsibilities, I say, are risk management and strategic planning issues. Those are the three, to me, foundational responsibilities. But many people argue that the most important function of the board is to make sure that you have the right CEO in place. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree. I mean, it's as part of our duty to create and sustain shareholder value, we absolutely have to ensure that there's continuity at the top. And, the tone at the top is everything. The success of the company is driven by the CEO. And so if you don't have the right CEO in the chair, nothing else really matters. And I think, we've all read about or heard about failed CEO successions and the fallout that occurs from that, whether it's lost shareholder value, a damaged reputation, stalled initiatives, or even, I think the hardest part is the breakdown in employee morale. And I think that, I can assure you that a failed CEO succession is very draining and disruptive to employees. And so it's vitally important that boards have a very thoughtful, disciplined approach to CEO succession because it can make a huge difference for the company.
And it is very clear. The public can tell right away whether a board is organized in that fashion or they aren't organized.
Well, it's almost sometimes reflective of how you manage the business overall.
So most directors, when they join a board, the CEO is already on board, okay? Yes, some go through the experience of there's a CEO opening or retirement or somebody has been terminated, so you have that. But most likely when you join a board, there's a CEO sitting there in place. So your responsibility becomes CEO succession. So we're going to take a look at making sure that program is in place. Now, interestingly enough, in the studies that I've been involved with over the years, CEO succession is one of the things that the directors themselves have said that they are least effective at doing, okay? So what should a company be doing, to have it in place? Who owns that task? And then why are the directors themselves saying that they are somewhat dysfunctional in performing this task?
So, I have a lot of experience in CEO succession from several different perspectives, from being the chief financial officer of a public company going through the CEO selection process, being a member of several boards that have ongoing succession planning processes that are a regular part of the board agenda. And then I also have been the chairman of the Nominating Corporate Governance Committee for a CEO selection. So I have those board and executive experiences. I also understand it from a CEO's perspective. I've had several friends who've turned over the reins of being CEO, and even my husband who retired after 17 years as CEO at an S&P 500 company. And so I've seen a broad range of outcomes from, I would say, total failure to complete success and almost everything in between. But when you talk about, the reticence that board members and CEOs might have in talking about CEO succession, I think that happens when it hasn't become part of a regular, ongoing leadership development program within the company. Ideally, you have a leadership development program that, goes down not only from the CEO, but to the executive team and the layer below that. And when you have an ongoing conversation that's a board agenda item, it takes away a lot of the emotion around it because it's just a normal course of business. Now, there are other instances where perhaps the board dynamic isn't quite right. And so that can cause issues in discussing the CEO succession. But I think all CEOs understand that it's vitally important to the company to have a strong succession plan. And if the board dynamic is right, they're more than willing to discuss it.
It is it would come under the
Yes.
category of a sensitive topic. And I understand how board members sometimes don't want to press the issue, and I understand how CEOs may not step up
Right.
real quickly. But a CEO can play a huge role in making that comfortable. If, again, your suggestion is the best case where it's part of a structured program.
Right.
But in the happenstance that that's not the case, a CEO can certainly make this a much easier process for the board if they understand the importance of making sure that that's in place. If for no other reason than something happens to them short term.
Right. Well, absolutely. And I'll talk about that in a second. But I think that you have to come back to your core mission as a board member and as a CEO, and that's the creation and preservation of shareholder value. And so it's incumbent upon you to have the conversation. It may be uncomfortable. It may be not the most timely thing, depending on what's going on with the company, but you have to, because it's so important to the continuity of the company and preserving shareholder value. And so I think, again, it goes back to the dynamic in the boardroom. If you don't already have a leadership development program in place, it's something that you should work on for the future, because it's important to build a management team up who can provide internal candidates for the CEO successor. And it's just really important for the continuity of the company in general. And so you have to have the conversation, as difficult as it may be.
So in addition to the leadership program, what are other steps that sort of a board can take to make sure that they have this covered, in their organization? Obviously, that's the biggest. But what
Right.
other steps would you sort of recommend to make sure that they have a viable CEO succession?
Well, if you have that leadership development program going on for a number of years, you're much more likely to be able to develop and identify an internal candidate. And that's, usually the first choice for boards and outgoing CEOs, is to have an internal candidate. I think that the other things that you can do is to make sure that the board gets to know each of those internal candidates, both inside the boardroom and outside the boardroom. You often learn a lot about a person outside of the boardroom. Golf can be very interesting. And then I think you need to make sure that there's a development plan that's in place for each of these internal candidates to make sure that they're, getting exposure to whatever areas they might have gaps in. And then I think that, it's important to make sure that as you get closer to a succession actually occurring, I think it's very important that the board and the CEO and the committees that work on it all have an understanding of what role they will share in this process. And then, again, as you get closer, you might want to look at external candidates as well as your internal candidates. But I think it's really important that you make sure it's a very transparent process with your internal candidates and that they believe it's fair. Otherwise, you risk losing those people that are maybe your best candidates by not having a strong communication with them. And then I think finally, once you've actually made the decision and you've announced who the CEO will be, you have to make sure as a board that you give that CEO the room to succeed. Many times a board is so concerned that they've made the right choice that they hold on too tight, and they won't give that CEO the room he or she needs to maneuver and get things done. And so as a board, you need to make sure they have the right resources to succeed, whether it's the executive team, constructive, positive feedback from the board, and most importantly, the authority to make the changes that the new CEO deems necessary for success.
Well, Sarah Lewis, there's no question that it is one of the most important functions. And I hope that we'll be able to sit here someday in the future and say that there is no longer the concern on the director's part that they have mastered this task, because it is so important. But I wanted to thank you for giving your advice and your time here on the show.
Thank you.
And that will conclude this edition of Inside America's Boardrooms. We hope you enjoyed the show. We will be back again next week when we take a look at another critical topic that will help you be a better board member and committee member. So we'll see you then.
Now, class, the next topic we will discuss is CEO turnover. A CEO may leave the position for a variety of reasons, including retirement, recruitment to another firm, dismissal for poor performance, or departure following a corporate takeover. In 2013, CEO turnover was 14.4% on a worldwide basis. This fact has been explained and been supported extensively by research studies. A research study has explained that the CEO of firms that are not performing well are more likely to step down than the CEOs of firms that perform well. Research studies which have been conducted on this fact have shown that there is a strong link between performance of the CEO and forced termination. Now I'll further explain the topic of CEO turnover. So there are multiple other studies that have been conducted on this topic. So there has been an extensive research studies that been conducted on this topic, which says that there is a inversely proportional relationship between corporate operating, stock price performance, and CEO turnover. The study of Genter and Llewellyn that was conducted in 2014 found that there is a greater sensitivity between performance and forced termination of the CEO and top executives. Furthermore, evidence also suggests that companies with strong governance systems are more likely to terminate an underperforming CEO. Now, class, we will discuss another topic of this lecture that is related to models of CEO succession. So there are four general models of CEO succession that are in practice. These models are: number one, external candidate; number two is president and or chief operating officer, CEO; horse race, that is number third model; and number fourth is inside outside model. I will explain one by one these models in coming slides. The first model involves recruiting an external candidate for the post of CEO. Board of Directors or the search committee look for an external candidate when there is no internal candidate available, or people working in an organization are not worthy to be considered by the board. There could be multiple reasons for this stance, which may vary from board to board. In the case of external candidate who may have more freedom in making strategic, operational, or cultural change related decisions in their earlier firm of employment, but this fact cannot provide surety that they are fit for new organization. The second model of CEO succession is basically to promote a leading candidate to the position of president or chief operating officer, COO, where the executive can be groomed for eventual succession. This approach allows a company to observe how an executive performs when given CEO level responsibility without having to first promote that individual directly to the post of CEO. In this way, the executive can be specifically tasked with overseeing a firm-wide initiative, providing the opportunity to interact with the board, analysts, the press, and the shareholders. In this case, a clear succession timeline needs to be established for the candidate who is considered to be promoted as CEO in the company. Now, class, we will discuss a mini case. This case is related to Walt Disney Company. In 2010, the Walt Disney Company reshuffled its executive ranks, announcing that Tom Staggs, Chief Financial Officer, and Ray Rezolo, Head of Parks and Resorts, would switch roles, setting up a succession race to succeed CEO Robert Iger. The move gave both executives a chance to learn new skills, with Staggs placed in a higher profile operating role and Rezolo in a strategic and financial role. In 2015, Staggs was named Chief Operating Officer, responsible for all of the company's operating divisions, including movies, television, consumer products, and parks and resorts. While the move did not guarantee Staggs the CEO role, his appointment was widely viewed by analysts as an indicator that he was the chosen frontrunner to succeed Iger upon his planned retirement in 2018. The third model of CEO succession is the horse race. This model was famously used at General Electric to determine the successor in 2001. Multiple other firms like Johnson & Johnson, Microsoft, Procter and Gamble have used this model of CEO succession. In this model, two or more internal candidates are promoted to higher level operating positions where they formally compete to become the next CEO. The progress of these candidates are measured over a specified period with evaluations and feedback provided at predetermined milestones. And then at the end of the evaluation period, a winner is selected as CEO. The drawback of this model is that it creates a politicized atmosphere in the organization, which eventually discourage inside talent. Now, the fourth model of CEO succession is inside-outside model. In this model, the company develops a forward-looking profile that lays out the skills and experiences required of the next CEO based on the future needs of the company. In this case, internal candidates are selected based on their potential fit with the profile of the CEO that is required in the organization. Each is given a preliminary assessment and areas for development that is basically been identified. This means that this model provides level playing field for the internal as well as external candidates. The candidates are selected based on an extensive external validation process, which is used in assuring the board that the best CEO out of the entire labor market has been appointed in the organization. The risk of using this model is that it requires significant planning and oversight by the board. Now class, watch an online video relating a case study of CEO succession planning.
The case of the runaway talent. In a city not too far away, Pharmagood is in the midst of their annual succession planning activities. Sally Planwell, the director of HR, is reviewing employee files and taking personal recommendations to identify successors for Pharmagood's key roles. In a meeting with Laura Lively, the vice president of scientific research, Sally is surprised to learn that Laura will soon be retiring. Sally asks for feedback on potential successors. Laura nominates her golf buddy, Charlie Porfit, even though he is new to the company. Sally takes note and names him as a successor to the VP of Scientific Research position. After hours of scouring binders and sitting through countless meetings, Sally completes her yearly succession planning exercise. Meanwhile, down in the lab, Jeff Hightalent, senior research scientist, is working on a groundbreaking disease cure. Suddenly, a headhunter calls from Pharmagood's competitor, PharmaBig, with a great job offer. With no sign of advancement at Pharmagood, he decides to try his luck with PharmaBig. Jeff's knowledge, skills, ideas, and passion will not be easily replaced. A few months later, after Jeff's departure, the disease cure stalls. Also, Charlie is overwhelmed in his new role and has made many promises that he can't fulfill. With the loss of Jeff and Charlie's poor fit, Pharmagood has been seriously impacted. The leadership team is extremely unhappy. Sally realizes the flaws of Pharmagood's succession planning process, but it's too late. Meanwhile, over at PharmaBig, Jeff discovers the cure. The company announces the news, and their stock price soars. Let's try that again. This time with SAP Talent Visualization by Nikisa. She launches a talent report called Key Positions that shows her all the roles that are critical to organizational success. she identifies an upcoming vacancy for the VP of Scientific Research position. Sally runs a profile match and identifies several well-qualified candidates for this role. Jeff Hightalent has exceptional competencies, qualifications, and experience for the position. She drills down into each candidate's profile and quickly sees that Jeff is flagged as having a high risk of loss. Analyzing his qualification, she realizes that he has critical knowledge and skills that are not easily replaceable. Aha! She clearly sees that Jeff is the right fit. She meets with Jeff to discuss his career goals. He is very excited at the potential of advancement. Back in her office, she nominates Jeff as a successor for the key role. Later, Jeff gets a call from PharmaBig's headhunter, but he is not interested in the offer because of his promising career at PharmaGood. A few months later, when Laura retires, Jeff advances to VP of Scientific Research. Shortly thereafter, Jeff successfully destroys the virus and receives accolades on a job well done. The announcement of Jeff's breakthrough has made the leadership team very happy. Jeff was the right fit for the VP of Scientific Research position. His success is PharmaGood's success. With SAP TVN, Sally was able to visualize what matters most and place the right person in the right role at the right time.
Now class, we will discuss the last topic of this lecture, that is the succession process. The succession planning process relies on the full engagement of both the board of directors and senior management of the company. As a best practice, succession planning is an ongoing activity and includes preparation for both scheduled and unscheduled transitions. This means that the most critical element of succession planning in an organization is the continued development of internal talent. At any time, the firm maintains a list of candidates that it can use or turn to in an emergency situation. It also maintains a list of primary candidates in line to replace the CEO in a planned succession. When a succession event is scheduled, the board might choose to convene an ad hoc committee specifically tasked with handling the process. This committee is generally chaired by the most senior independent director. The new CEO will ultimately be selected by a vote of the full board based on the committee recommendations. The next step in the succession process is to create a skills and experience profile. This profile is based on a forward-looking view of the company. The profile is used as a yardstick against which both internal and external candidates are benchmarked. Now class, watch an online video relating effective CEO succession process.
So CEO succession in any organization, but particularly in a healthcare organization, can be very problematic. It's typically something that a board does only once during the duration of its members' terms, if at all, because it doesn't occur that often. So boards are unfamiliar with the rigor and process required to do it well. I think there's been a growing awareness that if a board has not thought through the strategy that it will undertake going forward and the requirements for its leader as they approach a succession scenario or a succession planning event, they find themselves at sea in a negative way. My main concern as we talk to board members across the country is that they don't focus on this topic as prominent a need in their board discussions as they should. So even if they don't have an immediate need for succession, having this conversation on a regular basis, at least a couple times a year, is something that will keep the issue front and center for them. In the absence of that, they're likely to be surprised, not in a good way. First and foremost, the board needs to be clear on its strategic options going forward. I think too often boards leap directly into the which person should we pick, rather than thinking about what the strategy that they will need to execute is and the type of person that would be best suited for that strategy. So they get, if you will, caught up in the cult of personality at times, rather than really aligning the individual opportunity or the individual candidate with the strategic need that the hospital or the healthcare system has. First is that the board cannot get itself aligned around strategy. That is, there are some factions on the board that think kind of a hold tight mentality is going to work best. There may be another faction that thinks, oh, we need to transform ourselves rapidly into more of a community-based healthcare plan, for example. And that schism, if it's not resolved before the succession planning work is undertaken, is usually deadly to the actuality of succession. From a CEO's standpoint, I think the biggest challenge for many CEOs is, frankly, acknowledging their own mortality or their own need to step outside of the organization at a very timely point. CEOs that we have worked with that have a greater awareness of when it's the right time to go do a much better job of shepherding the CEO succession practice. First one comes with getting aligned around strategy. So that sounds easy, but it's usually not, because boards, again, have different perspectives and the external environment is moving rapidly. So it's very difficult sometimes for a board to keep aligned as it looks at its strategic options. But once it does that, then it needs to get very granular about the characteristics or attributes of the next CEO. And that too is quite an extensive undertaking, requires board time and investment and ultimately alignment. But if it can get those two things right and in essence create this benchmark for the next CEO, as candidates come into the picture, whether they're internal candidates or external candidates, they can be compared objectively and extensively against that benchmark. And then the board has good objective information to make an informed decision.
Now class, this is the end of the lecture. The article reading assignment which I have given to you is related to Harvard Business Review article. So you have to use Microsoft Teams corporate governance class platform to read an article that is 7.7. After reading, use MS Word online and type one-page review in your own words covering the article and turn it in your review assignment over there. So the article title is 7 Tenets of a Good CEO Succession Process, which has been uploaded on Microsoft Teams corporate governance class. The submission deadline is also been mentioned over there. The date for the quiz of chapter number 7, which we have just completed, will be between 27 to 1st May 2020. I hope you have understood the topics and concepts studied in this lecture. Inshallah, I will see you in the next lecture relating chapter number 8. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.